Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm Klemen Pahulje and I come from company SPL, the leading company in the field of real estate management in Slovenia. Let me start with some questions. What's the current material status of housing fund in Slovenia? What are the correct approaches of planning maintenance works in multi-dwelling buildings? Who can manage the tremendous estate of condominium owners? What challenges do we face in this field in Slovenia? There are only a few questions we'll try to answer. Due to the limited time, I will only present basic information so that you will receive a broader perspective regarding the developments in this field in Slovenia. The objective of the presentation is to warn about the insufficient management and maintenance of multi-dwelling buildings in Slovenia. Through analyzing the causes of the current poor condition of housing fund, I want to present proper approaches of maintaining and managing multi-dwelling buildings and find good practices that, in compliance with the characteristic of the Slovene social situation, would be reasonable to include in Slovenian housing policy. Our goal is integration of instruments for more efficient renovation of multi-dwelling buildings and establishing a consistent housing policy in Slovenia. What's the scope of housing stock and scope of companies operating in this field in Slovenia? Slovenia's housing fund consists of a few more than 650,000 dwelling type units. Among these, more than 300,000 housing units are located in multi-dwelling buildings. Along with the growing number of companies operating in this field, the demand for these services is also increasing. Right now, there are more than 1,000 companies registered in this business, and from these, around 400 are active. The number of property management companies is high, mostly due to the fact that in Slovenia there are no special requirements or conditions for the performance of the activity, except the registration of the activity. We'll speak more about this later. The main issue in Slovenia is inadequate material state of the housing stock. Because of neglect of regular and investment maintenance, more than half of housing buildings belong to the category of very poorly maintained buildings. About 70% of dwellings are older than 30 years, which means that many elements are amortized and in need of renovation. The deterioration of multi-dwelling buildings does not affect only the market value of the buildings, but also decrease in life expectancy. With the deterioration of the housing fund, this becomes not only the problem of dwelling owners, but also the problems of the state. The results of this is that with the continuation of the current situation, a major part of building new housing will be dedicated to replacing what's being lost by inadequate maintenance of dwellings. Based on the current material status of housing fund in Slovenia, there is a need for functional, energy, and in some cases also other types of renovation. For example, seismic retrofitting. About seismic retrofitting, we have already heard today by Professor Pfeiffer in the morning session. Before we continue to additional issues, there is important question which arise. The question is, why housing legislation in some European countries enables the efficient management and maintenance of multi-dwelling buildings, yet in Slovenia the almost identical legislation does not completely achieve its aim? One of the reasons is that varying socio-economic development of countries results in different housing policies, and with that, different styles of managing multi-dwelling buildings. The Housing Act, adopted in 1991, determined the legal grounds for eliminating socially owned property in housing in Slovenia. After the privatization, the percentage of privately owned dwellings increased to 88%. That's one of the highest in Europe. As such, Slovenia is in different positions in terms of managing multi-dwelling buildings in comparison to Western European countries, especially Germany, where the percentage of privately owned dwellings is smaller. So consequences of privatization of the maintenance of multi-dwelling buildings are next. Firstly, fragmented ownership, which prevent from reaching needed mutual content. Secondly, the issue of socially disadvantaged owners who bought the dwelling at the low price, but will not be able to carry the financial burden of owning property long term. And thirdly, lack of responsibilities for maintenance of joint ownership. Let's move to challenges. The challenges we are facing mainly refer to the question how to deal with the issues or the main obstacles slowing down the renovation of multi-dwelling buildings, where the main obstacles is mostly the lack of financial assets of owners. Also, other obstacles are mentioned on the left side of the screen, such as inability to negotiate between owners, indifference toward joint ownership, inadequate building manager, and so on. So the main challenge is how to overcome the legislative, economic, and social obstacles impending renovation of housing fund. What are the correct approaches to planning maintenance works in multi-dwelling buildings? Maintenance is the most important business activity in managing. In Slovenia, the approaches toward organizing maintenance have so far been too often incoherent and unplanned. The intervenient maintenance was carried out on the basis of building's current situation and not preventively. Moreover, in most cases, maintenance was carried out in accordance with individual demand made by dwelling owners concerning their financial capabilities and not in accordance with the actual demand or the condition of the building. To prevent continuation of the poor practice of maintaining buildings, the manager has to be familiar with a wide range of different skills and is obliged to prepare a maintenance plan. Preparing the maintenance plan demands that the manager knows the building completely and demands a professional approach when analyzing the gathered data. In general, the database is formed in a software environment and the register of individual elements and other equipment is formed. Individual building elements are enriched with additional attributes such as maintenance instruction, warranty, and so on. A systematic solution enables the manager to monitor and plan regular maintenance works and plan expense dynamics. A well-made maintenance plan presents a key instrument in the cooperation with the dwelling owners. What are the benefits of the transition to a preventive maintenance? These are minimizing the communal expenses, slowing rate in aging of building elements, achieving a higher quality of living, and so on. The use of modern technology has an ever-growing role in the maintenance itself and the optimization of maintenance costs. One of them is definitely building information model, about which we have already heard a lot today. As I mentioned, our goal is integration of instruments for more effective renovation of multi-dwelling buildings. The aim to establish a system that will stimulate renovation project also underlines the resolution on the National Housing Program 2015 to 2025. With this, the emergency measures are set at the state level. The most effective measure by which to achieve energy renewal without legal or other coercion is financial assistance. An example of a success of using financial instruments in Slovenia is clearly demonstrated by the ECO Fund. It's public environment fund which grants favorable loans and grants for investing in improving the energy performance of buildings. It's been shown that such financial incentives for the inhabitants are very attractive and they achieve good results. It's therefore reasonable to continue to use already tested and similar financial instruments for both energy and functional renovation. Financial aspects of the renovation of buildings must be followed also by social measures. In Slovenia, owners of dwellings still not aware that the dwelling unit cannot perform its function without communal areas of building. For example, maintenance work, such as roof repair, is of key importance for individual owner, while by others are completely forgotten, even though it's common property of all floor owners. This is also the fundamental difference between Slovenia and other European members, so in the awareness of property, because the property is not an advantage, but also great duty or burden in terms of carrying out maintenance. The objective of housing policy is to establish a legal and organizational framework that will balance the expectation of owner in relation to the other parts of multi-dwelling buildings. I would also like to emphasize the need for continuous education of all involved in the process, such as dwelling owners, building managers, suppliers, construction companies, and others. Additional goal is establishment of a consistent housing policy in Slovenia. One of the most important requirements of the management profession is that the domain of the real estate management would be systematically regulated in one regulation. Nevertheless, when using and implementing good practices and solutions from other countries, it's necessary to take into account certain specifics of Slovenian social reality. What about conditions for performing the activity? In Slovenia, the only requirement or condition for carrying out the property management activities is registration of the activity. But this is hardly the requirement. There are no professional, capital, or other conditions for conducting this business in Slovenia. In some other European countries, the conditions for pursuing an activity are work experience, level of education, valid insurance policy, or at least additional training for active managers. With the introduction of the Trusted Manager Certificate, in Slovene, Certifikat zaupanja vreden upravnik, the Real Estate Association sets basic conditions for the performance of activities, which serve as help to the floor owners in the selection of the manager. In order to obtain the certificate, companies must demonstrate compliance with the above-mentioned conditions, which in some European countries are constant. At the moment, there are 30 companies with certificate of Trusted Manager in Slovenia. In Slovenia, the entire real estate management market is still developing. With understanding of good and bad practices in the past and proper practices of other countries with a long tradition in this field, it's necessary to achieve more efficient management and maintenance of multi-dwelling buildings in Slovenia. And let me finish with a statement. The housing fund is one of the constituents of the national wealth of every country and the mirror of the housing policy. Thank you for your attention.